So I want to go through a couple of assignments that were turned in really quickly. Not too crazy much. But I'm going to throw something out to you guys right now. Shoot. So what I want to look at is this assignment right here, this 8.1. It was an assignment to actually redo 6.1. And some of you actually redid 6.1 and turned it in, and that was great. But some of you turned in nothing, which was stupid, because you could have turned in 6.1 and at least gotten better than a 0 for that. So I don't know that that applies to anybody in here, because I think most of you guys turned the stuff in. But for anybody who's listening to this recording, you need to think a whole lot smarter about all these things in life. So anyway, that's just my thing that I've got to say about that. I'm not going to look at any of these. We've gone over all of this stuff before. But I am going to look at the next group. And I'll start with Ryan's. And Ryan, you were not alone in this. But clearly the head trick was, the twisting the head was the most difficult part of this whole assignment. So we're actually going to do that in class. We're not going to do the other parts, but we are going to do that part in class. So different people came up with various versions of this. Let me shoot.
I saw your note that
Yeah. We're going to do it. It's just easier that way, yeah. So then that way everybody gets sort of like, take advantage of that whole part. Something I wanted to show you really quickly. And Ryan, I think this happened with your file on my screen. So everybody needs to pay attention to this one. This is a pretty, in my opinion, this is a relatively fatal bug in Photoshop. I don't know if this is going to happen on this one, but we're going to try it. So anyway, a lot of times when I'm grading these things, I'll actually go in and see what I can rework and see how things, the best way to actually have that conversation with you guys about, oh, we should do this, we should do that, blah, 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 blah. So I was looking at this, and I came in and I was looking at the distortion of the shoulder right here, and this is something that you need to look out for, especially in liquefying. You can see that it's really distorting the fabric here. It's really distorted the fabric over here. So one way to actually get around, or to not to get around that, but to fix that part of it is, again, hang on one second, let me get a tablet going here, because it's easier to do this kind of work with a tablet. So anyway, there's two tools that you can use. I'm going to use the Restore tool or the Reconstruct tool. And remember, the things that control how fast this Reconstruct tool works over here are pressure and rate. So in this case, if I crank my pressure all the way up and I crank the rate all the way up, and I come over and I just touch this, I mean, you just see it just, bam, it just takes it right back. There's no control over that. So I'm going to undo that part, and instead I'm going to drop my pressure and my rate all the way down. Now this may be too slow, in which case we could bump it up a little bit. But I'm going to start working on here, and look at what's happening on my screen. Look at all this look at how she's shaking and all of this kind of stuff. That to me is the bug that exists here in Photoshop. So to get around that, I'm going to cancel this. I'll show you what the problem is and how to easily fix it. The problem is this: if you come up and look at your Photoshop preferences, so I'm clicking on Photoshop, down to Preferences, and come down to Performance, you'll see right here that it says that we are going to use a graphics processor. Basically, there's a card inside of your computer that drives the screen of your computer, and it's dedicated to graphics. And since Photoshop are graphics, they realized that they could actually leverage the graphics card, that it was much, much, much better at doing the Photoshop work than just the general processor that's sitting in your computer. So this use graphics processor is huge, and you don't want to just turn this thing off because it'll grind your Photoshop to a halt. But the problem is that in the Liquify interface, using that graphics processor is a problem. So there's a way to override it temporarily while you're going into the Liquify tool. You don't have to quit and restart Photoshop, which is a boon. So to do it, if you are on Macintosh, you hold down the Option key when you click on going into Liquify. If you're on a Windows machine, you hold down the Alt key when you go into Liquify. So I'm going to do this very same thing. I'm going to go right back into Liquify to see if I can't fix that shoulder, but I'm going to hold down the Option key first and then double click on Liquify. I'm now in the Liquify workspace. Things don't look really different at all. But now, hopefully, when I go to use that tool, so again, I'm going to use the Reconstruct tool, and I can start working this in, and you see I don't get that shaky face, I don't get that weird distortion, I don't get any of those things that are actually going on. Does that make sense, everyone? And this has been happening now for the last 2 or 3 versions of Photoshop, so it's a really important trick to know. I'm going to pull my pressure up on this to get it to work a little bit faster, and I'm going to just try to rebuild the shoulder here because, again, the fabric just got so distorted. Now, I've got issues with the hair that I'm going to have to deal with. That's okay. But you can see here that it actually, look at the fabric, it's all been distorted to, it's sort of given her I don't know, things are just really weird in here. So I'm going to bring those back, even though it might make her boobs a little bit larger. The issue with her boobs was not to make them smaller per se. It was really more to lift them up to give her more of a sense of a stomach as well. It was really sort of elongate all of this part. So anyway, I just wanted to point that part out. I want to show David's really quick. David actually managed to get his all the way done. Now what he did was the head rotation. We're going to show the head rotation today in class. We're going to do it all together. But basically what he does is he starts out with an image that's still distorted like this, and then he actually does a copy and paste of the head and rotates it. Because doing the rotation using Liquify alone it's not impossible to do, but it's really tricky to do because it distorts the face unequally. The outer side of her face is going to always distort more than the inner side of her face. So when you rotate it, the sides of her face don't distort equally. If you imagine them on sort of like a CD disc or just a round circle or something, as you're actually rotating that circle, the outer part of the circle rotates more than the inner part of the circle rotates. It covers more area, and so that's what introduces the distortion. So this was the right trick. The only thing I would say to it, and David's actually looks pretty flawless. The only thing I would say about this is that it's easier for me to do all the liquefying first to actually get the head as close as you can, and then do this copy and paste and rotate the head. So this is what the layer looks like by itself. To do this rotation at the very end of the game instead of at the very beginning of the game. So that's just a preference on my part. I think it's a little bit easier. The problem that I get with doing the rotation in the beginning is that then when you actually go to do any part of the liquefying, you might have trouble getting the two things to line up, to blend up into place. And so if you do it after the fact, it's easier to bring them, the two together, I think. But at any rate, you can see here that David's was actually very successful. So this was the before and after. Pretty well done. The problem everybody runs into in doing this trick, though, is this repeating issue right here. You can see that there's hairs that are sort of repeating here. My take on this, or the way I usually deal with this, is I go in and I push this. I push the hair in a little bit to just have it be a little less obvious, and then there's no reason that you can't continue to use your other retouching tools to go in here and do a clone stamp or copy and paste a hunk of hair to actually, put into here, just to sort of break up the fact that this begins to look like a repeating pattern. So I'm going to close that up. Mari also had a really good version of this done. You can see this is hers. And in her case, she did this entirely, they did this entirely using Liquify, which is actually incredibly difficult to do. So this is, again, the before and after. And it's funny, there's a little bit of distortion in the face, but it's a good thing. It made her face a little bit thinner. Her face is not weird. It's not like...
Yeah, I know that
Well, and again, no, but it worked. I mean, again, but you have to also then, I know that you had to spend time reworking the distortion that happens, because what happens on this right side of her face is more severe than on the left side of the face, and you brought the two back into balance, and that's really the trick to all of this. So it worked out really well, and in your case, you actually fixed that hair issue really well. Just over and all, this is actually really well done. So Jordan had the same idea, but one fatal flaw. So in Jordan's, things look pretty good here at the beginning, but as you begin to zoom in on this and you take a look at this side over here, you see that things get kind of fucked up along this line over here. It's like there's clearly something not right that's happening in here. So this is his head turn. I'm going to show it to you by itself. So this is his head turn right here. There is a layer mask on here which is hiding some of this. So I'm going to turn the layer mask off. And you can see the problem in this is that all of the area that you had to actually do the blend got cut out. It looks like I think you made this selection either with a quick selection tool or something like that. Don't know what it is, but all of this part is missing. So when you got down to this part to blend this, you no longer had hair or background or anything to work with. Make sense? Yeah, so the real trick on this, and you'll see when we actually go to do it, is I'm just going to grab the lasso key, and I would grab all of her neck. I would grab everything that's going down there. I would grab her shoulder too. I would jump all of this to its own layer. And this is what I would start with as a patch. And then just let the mask control what you see and what you don't see. Yeah. Oh, and the thing is that I know what it's like to do, because by the time you'd gotten into it and you were really working with it, you'd invested a lot of time in it already. And it's like, fuck, I've got to go back to ground one. And anyway, so believe me, I feel your pain, but I'm just saying that would be the way to do it. But nonetheless, short of that blend part worked out actually pretty well. I'm going to show you one last one. Caleb's was also actually pretty well done. The only issue that I had with his, again, I would have put a little more shape in this side of the hair right here, and then you can see the ends are just lopped off. And this is probably not too dissimilar to what was going on with Jordan's issue right here. They just sort of like, they drop off, and this just doesn't look real to me. So again, liquefying again at a final stage in there to push that kind of stuff in would have helped quite a bit. All in all, I was a little disappointed with the knockouts in 8.3. Some of them were okay. Nobody actually aced this one. So I'm going to take a look at Xavier's first. All in all, pretty well done, but the hair just got too aggressive, the selection part of the hair. And this comes either from making if you're using zero selective color, it's either from oversaturating the green and it starts to eat into the hair, or when you go to use the levels part on this, you're over aggressive with the levels part. You've got to back it off again. If we have time, we'll take a look at this, but I've got a lot that we've got to try to get through today. First time you've heard that, isn't it? This is I don't understand this. Does this look like a knockout to you guys? No, there's all this shit left, and it's also easy to fix. Most of the problem in here is, it's actually, if you hold down the option key and look at the mask, you can see where the problem is. I mean, it's sitting right down here. So a number of ways of going about this. The cheap and easy way to do it is just to grab a brush, change the blending mode of the brush to overlay, make sure it's sort of a medium hard brush, make it a little bit bigger. And again, I need this floor to be black, but the fur is already white, so I shouldn't have too much of a problem using overlay on that. And I'm just going to start to hit this, and that's how I'm cleaning up my mask. So, and again, this little area right here, just hit it a second time, and that part's gone. So now if we take a look at it, this has cleaned up the floor in that area. I mean, these things are just simple to do. This thing on the side over here, the lasso key, grab a big old chunk edge of it, still working on the layer mask, and fill that with black, and it's just gone. I mean, this shit is too easy. And again, well, anyway, you guys know where I'm going. I'm going to do my best. Okay, everybody else on that's pretty good. It looks like, again, Jordan, not to pick on you, I'm just curious how this whole thing started. I think I know. I think I wrote it to you, and I just wanted to sort of like confirm if that was really the truth. Again, all this edges could have been cleaned up, but if I come in and take a look here at this part, you can see how white the hair is, which is actually a clue. You should actually tuck that away in your list of whatever to do about how to make gray hair or how to make white hair, right? So if we take a look at the mask, though, this is where the problem is. If you take a look at the mask, you can see all the detail in the mask, and all of that black part's letting all the white background come through. That's where the issue is. So my guess is, did you do this with Select a Mask?
To get the hairs,
Yeah. No, and the Select a Mask is a perfectly viable thing to do, but you come in and it does shit like this on you, and it's just like, oh no, that's not what I want. That's, I need all that cleaned out. And this is hard to clean out. If we do the same brush, the overlay brush on this, set to white, you can see it'll do some of it, but it gets really fucked up when you come out into the hair part in here. We'll see what it looks like in real time. So let me undo that. So again, I'm still working on that layer mask and still painting with white. So you can see I can start to bring parts of it back in. It's actually helping a little bit more, probably because I know that this is the solid part of her head. You can simply go back into that part, change your brush back to just a normal brush. And all of this stuff that's on the inside, all of this, has got to go to white. So even if you don't have the edges, done, you can get those parts and then go back to a normal overlay brush, and you can finish cleaning out all those parts, whatever. And this would at least get us in a better place. But again, I still think the issue. So this is where we are right now. I think the issue here was just sort of how it started. Again, that zero selective color in many ways is, I'm still trying to find a way to figure out something that does it better, and I haven't ever found it. So, and one final one, take a look at Max. And again, I'm just guessing here, but looking at this, the initial knockout actually looks pretty good until I really look at all the edges of the hair, and everything here looks super, super smoothed out, and it looks like the edge of the mask has been blurred, and I'm seeing the same thing here. So Mac, my guess on yours was that you actually did a choke and a spread on this, possibly to control that edge, to contract it. Would that be, yeah. And the thing is that a couple things happened. Number one, you only needed to do the choke and the spread on the body. It killed all the fine, all these little parts of the boa. It killed all those. It killed all the hair. So that's why you use that history trick, so that you can go back and have some areas that are choked and some areas that are not. But it also looked to me like your edge here, and I'm going to show you a quick way to fix this. It looked like your edge here, it stays a little bit too soft. Let me find something that'll actually look a little bit better when I do it. Yeah, we can look down here because you can really sort of see the softness in the hand. If we take a look at the mask, again, I'm just going to hold down the Option key to take a look at it. You can see that, again, it probably still needs to be impacted more. We need a sharper edge on this. We need more contrast on the edge is what it really boils down to, which we can do. Before I do anything, though, I'm going to actually do a snapshot of what we look like right now, and I'll call this prefix. And then I'm going to, onto the mask, I'm going to run levels, Command L, and again, if I start to pull in the blacks here, you can see it's actually choking the mask. But if I also start to pull back the whites, you can see it starts to sharpen up that edge. And look how much sharper this edge is now than it was before. So to see what's happening in just the mask itself, we'll just take a look at the mask. Again, Command L to actually do it again. So if I only pull this in one direction, it either does, in this case, it's choking. If I only pull it in the other direction, it's spreading. But if I do a bit of both, I'm actually doing contrast on that edge. And if you do it to the ultimate extreme, I'm going to bring these things all the way completely next to each other. It's like razor sharp. It's tack again. So you can restore your edges even after the fact. It's just something to keep in mind. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, I'm going to cancel that. We're going to get out of that. Okay, so I asked people to bring in work today. I'm going to pause the recording because we don't need to actually record that.